Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today I'm going to make a gravity side scrunch shirt. The setup that I'm using is I have two plastic sawhorses, and between the two plastic sawhorses I've placed a couple of long pieces of vinyl guttering. Then I've placed a small metal rack in between the two pieces of vinyl guttering. This shirt is going to be a side scrunch, so I'm placing one side of the shirt on the metal rack, and I'm scrunching it into the middle of the metal rack. The rest of the shirt is falling in between the two pieces of vinyl guttering. To hold the shirt on the metal rack, I'm going to poke a few of those pieces of fabric through the holes that are in the rack. Then, in order to hold the ice on top of the shirt, I'm going to make myself a very small ice barrier using some of the silicone cake molds that I normally use. I'm going to wrap them around the scrunch portion of the shirt and hold them up close to the shirt with some wooden clothespins, which I'm going to attach to the rack. I've also placed a plastic container underneath where I have my metal rack to catch any of the runoff from the shirt. By the way, at the same time I'm doing this shirt, on the other end of the pieces of vinyl guttering, I'm going to do another shirt. So this setup works really well to be able to do multiple shirts at the same time. To apply the dye to the shirt, I'm going to apply it only to the scrunched area, and I've chosen some colors that I'm hoping are going to split really pretty. The first one I'm using is Flintstone from Dye Spin, and I'm just randomly applying the color to the scrunched area. The next color is Spicy Plum from Pro Chemical and Dye. And if you haven't ever tried this color, it's a really pretty color. It splits really nice. Now I'm using Rose Wine from Pro Chemical and Dye. And with these you can kind of tell how well they color split because the dye itself is green instead of being like a burgundy-ish type color. Now I'm using one of my favorite Pro Chemical colors, which is Dusty Purple. And here again, this purple color goes on green and it splits green. If you mix the Dusty Purple as a liquid, it is purple, and it does have purple in it, so there's going to be purple on the shirt, but it will also split out green, which makes a really cool effect on the shirt. The last color I'm adding is Pro Chemical's Midnight Blue. And then I'm going to add an additional sprinkle of soda ash over the top of everything. I'm going to force quite a bit of water through this shirt in the form of ice. And I want to make sure that I don't rinse out all the original soda ash that I put in the shirt from my soda ash soak. Then over the top of this shirt, I'm going to place a big chunk of ice. I made this big chunk of ice using an old Cool Whip container. And to fill in any of the little gaps, I'm going to add a couple other small pieces of ice. Where I live, it is really hot in the summertime, and so I originally started doing these shirts with smaller pieces of ice, and they would melt almost instantaneously. Within about 30 minutes, I was having to replace the ice. So I went ahead and started making some larger chunks of ice, and this has really helped give a slow melt on the shirt and help me from replacing the ice about every 30 minutes. I didn't really have to add any more ice to this shirt because by the time that large chunk of ice melted, the dye had made it all the way to the outer edges of the shirt. I went ahead and left this shirt outside for about 12 hours. And it was over 100 degrees that day, so the shirt went ahead and dried out. But as hot as it was outside, the dye should have had plenty of time to bond with the fabric before the shirt dried out. That's something that you have to keep in mind when you're tie-dyeing outside or tie-dyeing in a really hot environment or anytime in general, is that once the shirt or the fabric dries out, that will stop the reaction and the dye won't continue to bond. This is why I add urea to my liquid dye. Urea is a humectant and it will help keep the fabric from drying out and allow the dye plenty of time to bond with the fabric. I don't use urea though when I'm doing ice dyeing. Normally if I put a shirt outside, I have it in a container and it's covered so it doesn't dry out. However, this process, the shirt is pretty much exposed to the elements, so the wind helps dry it out a lot faster. But one advantage of the heat and the wind is that it's hot enough to go ahead and quickly bond the dye with the fabric. The hotter the environment is, the faster the dye bonds. So when I rinsed the shirt, I started rinsing it in cold water to go ahead and rinse out the soda ash like normal. Then I went ahead and warmed the water up to hot and continued rinsing to rinse out any of the excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric. When I took the shirt to the sink and I started rinsing it, there was some dye left sitting on top that hadn't fully dissolved. I went ahead and just kind of brushed that off into the sink and rinsed it down the sink before I started rinsing the shirt. When the water was running almost clear, I put the shirt into my washing machine along with some of Dharma's professional textile detergent, and I washed it using a hot water cycle. Then, after the shirt was washed and dried, let's see how it looks. Okay, so what do you think? I really love this one. I think this shirt turned out looking so cool. I love all the different color splits from these colors. Like I said, the rose wine, spicy plum, and dusty purple all have beautiful color splits. If you remember, we didn't put any green on the shirt at all. And there's a lot of green and teal type colors coming down the shirt, which I think look absolutely beautiful. Those are coming from the spicy plum and the dusty purple. I'm not really sure about the rose wine. I don't know if I've ever used it by itself before to do ice dyeing with. I did do a shirt though where I only used two colors and one of them was spicy plum, and so it yielded a lot of these same colors. I photographed the shirt both flat and I photographed it on a mannequin, and I think sometimes it's a little easier to see the design on the flat photographs. I think it's easier to see how much and how far the dye moved on the shirt when it's laying flat. But what about that dye movement? That is awesome. I love this technique because I think that each shirt just looks so absolutely unique. I mean, let's get real, that's the way tie-dye is in general. But I think with this one, the way the dye moves on the shirt and that scrunch area on the side that's got the colors that are darker, it just looks really cool. I've put it on the mannequin and I've shown you the side view where the scrunch area is to see how cool that area looks on its own. I mean, it's got darker shades of dye and lighter shades of dye and just so much color variation on that side portion of the shirt. That area looks really cool just by itself. So I've put in several different close-ups of the shirt just so that you can kind of get a feel for what's going on. It's kind of a combination between a tall, deep scrunch and I don't know, I mean, that watercolor look is just so unique where the dye just streams down the shirt. I just really love this technique. I think all these shirts end up looking so cool and unique. But what do you guys think? Drop me some comments down below and let me know. Do you like this technique? Do you want to see more like this? And if you all have enjoyed watching me make this shirt, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.